Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today I'm playing Call of Duty Black Ops 1 via Xbox One backwards compatibility, and I am really enjoying playing this game. I really can't believe it. Other than the graphics looking a little bit outdated now, it is the game that I know and loved from back in 2010. 9 years ago now. That's absolutely crazy. And this is, a lot of people say, what is COD like? What are the core tenets that make this series what it is? And I think it depends on where you got into the franchise that you'll say where the series was at its best. I'm sure there are plenty of people who think Black Ops 3 is the best the series has ever had with its advanced movement. Some people will say Call of Duty 2 because it was a really refined World War II experience. It depends on where you got onto the franchise. But for me, this isn't where I got onto the franchise, but it's where, I don't know, the franchise felt very fair. That's the way I'd say it. It felt like a very fair, very enjoyable game. And I'll elaborate on what I mean by fair. Firstly, it was a very generous experience. You had multiplayer, as you're seeing on screen, with plenty of maps to play, lots of assault rifles and SMGs, like a huge armory of guns that you could use. And not only that, but there was extensive customization on those guns, not just camos, but also you can change the way your red dot sight looks, for example. And rather than having to rely on supply drops to get that, which take forever to grind, you could just earn them and go after them quite easily through COD points. But this is where COD points weren't like a premium currency. You just earned them through playing the game, and you could very easily get the gun to look the way you wanted within just a few matches. It's the way it used to be, and it's something a lot of people wish it would go back to. Also, it's a very content-rich game on the whole. Not only is there the multiplayer, you've got a nice campaign, you have the zombies mode, which by default came with 2 maps, and also there's Dead Ops Arcade, so you've sort of got 4 modes in this game. I mean, I know Dead Ops is quite small, but it's there, it's something to enjoy. And also, this is where Call of Duty, I think, was still pretty realistic. Yeah, I know there were some silly things you could do with customization. You could put a smiley face on your red dot, and that's a little bit cheeky. But on the whole, it is quite grounded. The maps all look realistic, like they could be real places. The guns are all rooted in history and act fairly accordingly. I mean, obviously, they'll take liberties for balance, but on the whole, they feel quite authentic to use. It's also a setting that, the Cold War setting, which still really isn't something they explored in games, so it's quite a nice, unique setting that even to this day we don't see much of. It's not an oversaturated era. In fact, it's one that I'm surprised they haven't gone back to recently, because they've done World War II so much for nostalgia, they've done Future to absolute death recently. This year they're going back to the modern setting, which, yeah, probably a good time to do that. But I feel like maybe after this, go back to the Cold War and do something like this, where you have these black operations going on, under the books, and if you're caught, then you never existed. I love things like that. So the setting is also pretty good. But also, yeah, just the sort of the grounded feeling is great. I mean, grounded also in the literal sense that there is no advanced movement in this game. And look, I am not a detractor of advanced movement. I've been playing Infinite Warfare recently, and I think it adds a lot to the Call of Duty experience. It adds an extra dimension to the combat. However, there is an appeal on both sides. You have the arcadey, extra-dimensional feel of advanced movement, but there's also the more realistic feel of a game like Black Ops, where you're on the ground, you have to use cover, move slowly, rely on your senses, and there is something to be said for that. And I really like the way it's balanced in Call of Duty Black Ops with the really fantastic map design. There are plenty of areas you can come at your opponent from, but I never feel as if, visibility is an issue. Like, there are too many angles that it's realistically possible to consider. I would say there's just the right amount of angles you can be killed from to make the game fair, yet also interesting. The absolute antithesis is, of course, the 3-lane design, where you just get routed directly into the path of your enemy. And then the more extreme would have to be the maps we saw in the Modern Warfare beta, where in something like the cave map, you could get shot from any angle in the dark. And that was a little bit hard to predict, but I think Black Ops 1 is a really nice mix of the two, where it gives you a fighting chance, right? You can see where people are coming from. It's not a perfect game necessarily, though. There are some quirks that I don't necessarily enjoy, but they are what they are. Like, when I'm playing Domination, for example, There's nothing more frustrating than getting killed instantly by a cooked grenade that you simply can do nothing about to counter. But that's been in so many of the Call of Duty games, so saying it Black Ops 1 is a little bit unfair. This was also the time where the grenade launcher was still plenty strong. The noob tube, like the noob tube is the classic OP thing, but at least at this point in Call of Duty history, it was an option anyone could go with, whereas now you can pay to get that kind of advantage, which makes it all kinds of sinister. Can you imagine if we lived in a world where they made the noob tube, the grenade launcher, locked behind supply drops? That would be absolutely awful. But I have always thought as well that with a grenade launcher that it offers newer players a way to get an easy kill, and it's not as if you can go on a rampage with it with loads of kill streaks, because of course you're limited heavily by how many shots of the grenade launcher you have. So it's not like you can use it just to go on crazy kill streaks. So if you're a newer player and you're happy to get a single kill and then die, I suppose in that respect the grenade launcher is actually maybe not the worst thing in the world. Yeah, it sucks to be killed by it, but it's a way of giving newer players a bit of a leg up, maybe, you know? Annoyingly, yeah, I do get a bit of latency playing this game. Also, yeah, I don't know, it's just some weird quirks in some of the lobbies. Like, I think the game, you might see me playing, some people just went idle, and they were idle on the other team for quite a long time and they weren't kicked. But I don't want to complain too much about that kind of stuff because it's of its time, right? It could be worse. It's also kind of interesting to look at the bigger picture and where Black Ops 1 fits into that on the whole. It's what I would call the golden age of Call of Duty, and I think that begins with Call of Duty 4 and ends with Black Ops 2. So what was mostly the 7th generation of COD titles. COD 4, obviously that's where the franchise just blew up and got really popular. World at War, yes, it did return to World War II, which at the time worried people, but it carried over the mechanics of COD 4, which meant it was a solid game and had a great campaign. You also had then Modern Warfare 2, which sort of just took the formula of COD 4 and then just injected some speed into it and made it more frantic, and a lot of people loved it for that reason. Then, well, as we're looking at here, Black Ops 1, just a solid title with an interesting new era of history to explore. Then we had Modern Warfare 3, a little bit of a controversy here in that it was very similar to Modern Warfare 2, but I feel as if that controversy is completely countered by the fact it sold so well. So clearly people wanted it, right? And then Black Ops 2, which was just a solid entry. It was the first time we saw a futuristic era. Well, it was actually a hybrid era. We had some that was still during the Cold War, and then some which was set in like 2025, which is getting, eerily close now. But then when it came to the next generation of Call of Duty titles with Ghosts was a little bit of a problem, right? Because I think the biggest issue, well, actually, it's not even like what was the biggest issue. There were multiple issues. So first of all, Infinity Ward by this point had lost a lot of its best talent. In fact, they lost a lot of it before Modern Warfare 3, but they were able to just sort of carry over what was already made there. But with Ghosts, they were trying to do something with a whole new team. They were also trying to develop for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and the brand new Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and PC. So they were stretched very far across the board, so you can understand why that would cause some problems. And then with Advanced Warfare, I would say that the overall quality did a nice little jump up. I thought the graphics engine got a nice revamp, the story was quite interesting, the multiplayer had advanced movement for the first time, so it was quite fresh and it changed things up. But unfortunately, this was where we got our first taste of supply drops, and that has in recent times become the worst thing about Call of Duty, the supply drops, the monetization. A franchise that was already quite expensive, having this additional layer on top of it. And when you look back to the likes of Black Ops 1, where it was pretty much you buy the game and then you buy the map packs, pure and simple, a very transparent form of transaction, you know what you're getting, compared to the masked and obscure system of more recent entries in the franchise, you can see why a lot of people look back and wish it was like this again. It was a simpler time and a somewhat more enjoyable time. I suppose one thing you can say with Call of Duty Modern Warfare coming out so soon now is that at least we don't have to pay for map packs anymore. So there you go, Black Ops 1. It's still a fun game to play even now after all this time. If you haven't played it ever, it's something worth going back and experience, if only just to have been playing through some COD history. It's a different era, Mechanically, it's still solid. You have to adjust the graphics a little bit, I'm sure, but yeah, it's a solid game. Even online, campaign's still great. You can do zombies. 2 thumbs up from this guy. As always, people, thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.